Hello, my name is Brian Smith, and if you're a strategist in the life sciences industry, then this seminar is meant for you. You can watch it as a YouTube video or listen to it as a podcast. And if you want the accompanying article, then just request it from my site. The details are in the notes below. I've worked in, researched, and written about this industry for over 40 years now, and my aim is to tell you something that is relevant and useful, but that you've not heard before. If I manage to achieve that, then please like, subscribe, and share this seminar with your colleagues. And if you want to know more about who I am and what I do, then take a look at the short video that is linked just here in the video. Now, I think we all know that both business and biology are complex, right? I don't mean complicated. Let's just take that for granted, shall we? I mean complex in the sense of complexity theory. In other words, there are just so many different things going on and interacting with each other that it's naive and impossible to say X causes Y. In genetics, for example, we've learned that there's very rarely a single gene for X. Similarly, business success is usually attributable to a combination of many different things. But are there exceptions to this rule? Might there be the business equivalents of genes that are disproportionately significant? Two recent experiences have got me thinking that there might be. When I was researching my book, Leadership in the Life Sciences, I interviewed a whole load of CEOs from pharma, medtech and other life science companies. All of the interviews were fascinating, but one of them stuck in my mind. The CEO of a family-run medium-large firm was passionate, perhaps angry would have been a more accurate term, when he told me that there were two types of CEOs. In his view, there are those whose mission was human health and well-being, and they managed return on investment as a means to that end. And then there were their mirror images, those for whom financial returns were the goal, and for whom human well-being was a means to that end. My informant saw himself very much as the former type of CEO, and the way he felt about the latter was not very well disguised. Now, I've no doubt that this was a simplification, but it was borne out by subsequent research. I've interviewed CEOs who see their position as a force multiplier that allows them to help more people than if they'd stayed a scientist or a doctor. But I've met others whose focus is on financial metrics, and that dominates how they view everything else. Now, to be clear, I'm not making a value judgment here. Academics try not to do that. But those two types of CEO seem a reasonable approximation to the truth. And ever since those interviews, I've wondered how to understand the truth better. If you trained as a scientist, then you'll know what I mean when I say that theory frames your thinking. You can't get a microbiologist, for example, to not think about germ theory, and you can't get a cell biologist to not think in terms of cells. My understanding of our industry is framed by my work in generalized Darwinism and the idea that there are business equivalent of genes. So if you've read any of my work, you'll know that these equivalents of genes are called organizational routines. These are little sub-processes for getting things done. In Darwinian thinking, both genes and routines are called replicators because they store information about how things can be done and they can be copied. So when I think about these two types of CEOs, I naturally think about how their routines differ, just as a biologist would look for genetic differences between two different kinds of organisms. This was on my mind as I listened to the always excellent podcast Big Biology, which featured Professor Matt Barber's work on keystone genes. Without getting into the weeds too much, these are simple genetic variants that have a disproportionate effect on the phenotype and on its ecosystem. Professor Barber's work has found keystone genes that shape plant defences and therefore the surrounding insect food web. It's fascinating work if you're into the science, but it focused my mind on the keystone routines that I might see in the C-suite of life science companies. I've kept Professor Barber's work and my passionate CEO's two types model in my head as I've continued to study life science business models. It's early days in that research, but I do think it's possible to differentiate between two different routines, different alleles of routines, if you like, in the C-suite. They can be seen in the way that big investment decisions are made, and especially the way that evidence is framed, weighed and acted upon. You see, both alleles consider financial and patient outcomes. And both, of course, filter out what would be clear economic or clinical failures. But the difference comes in borderline cases. One allele of the routine weights patient outcome higher, the other favours economic returns. And what's interesting to see is how even very rigorous and objective analyses can be shaped and swayed and bent by CEOs' cognitive biases and habits. These seem to be associated to a large degree with the CEO's business and scientific background. So what might this mean in practice? Well, when he was asked about the practical implications of keystone genes, Professor Barber points to the possible implications for agricultural science. But I think there may be analogous implications for the life sciences industry. You see, investors who want to impact on patient well-being might well recruit CEOs who exhibit patient-centric routines. Conversely, those who are focused on returns should focus on CEOs with other financialized decision routines. Equally, senior executives who are joining a company might consider their genetic compatibility, as it were, with the CEO. The CEO's routinome may not be the only thing that you consider when you take a job, but you probably shouldn't ignore it. Thanks for joining my seminar. If you found this worth your time, then please like, subscribe and share with your colleagues. If you'd like to read the article that goes with the seminar, then please contact me through my website, which also lets you look at another 300 articles I've published. And if you'd like to know about how my research can help improve your organisation's competitive capabilities, then just get in touch and we'll set up a virtual coffee. I'd love to hear from you.